have us together. This is the Thursday, October 6th, 2022 meeting of the Sacramento Area Council of Governments Transportation Committee. Our agenda is posted and we will be conducting this meeting in a hybrid fashion. As soon as we adopt our consent calendar, we will have approved the remote access by board members and staff and the public. There will be opportunities for people to provide public comment, both at the beginning of the meeting on general topics and then on items that we will be considering. There'll be opportunity for direct comment on those items before we take action. Let's see, Lynette, would you be willing to call roll?
Thank you. Good morning. Yes, roll call. We'll start with Director Branscombe. Absent. Gog.
Yes.
Guerrero. Oh, excuse me, Ledesma for Guerrero.
Here.
Thank you. Jennings.
Here.
Andreata for Joyner.
Here.
Lozano. Absent. Sander. Absent. Chenier.
Here.
Spokley. Absent. Soon.
Here.
Vice Chair Bradford.
Here.
Vice Chair Desmond.
Here.
Chair Saylor.
Here.
And ex officio member Tacker for Benny Paul.
Good morning here.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, everybody. This now is opportunity for people to address us, for the public to address us on any matter, hopefully related to the Transportation Committee function that are not on the agenda. Is there anyone in the room or online who would like to address the committee?
There's no public comment.
Very good. Thank you. So that brings us to the consent calendar. Is there anything that anyone would like to remove from the consent agenda? There are 2 items on that agenda. If not, there's like a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent calendar.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
So we have a motion by Director Gog and a second by Director Andreata. Please call the roll on the consent items.
Thank you. Director Branscombe. Absent. Gog.
Yes.
Ledesma for Guerrero.
Yes.
Jennings.
Yes.
Andreata for Joyner.
Yes.
Lozano.
Aye.
Sorry, Director Lozano, I didn't catch that.
Yes.
Thank you. Sander. Absent. Chenier.
Yes.
Spokley. Absent. Soon.
Aye.
Vice Chair Bradford.
Aye.
Vice Chair Desmond.
Aye.
And Chair Saylor.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you, everybody. We're now to item 3, the downtown Riverfront streetcar sponsorship change. And it says Christina.
Hi, good morning. Yes,
Good
so the downtown Riverfront streetcar project is a partnership that has been advancing over the last, almost 18 years or so. And it is a partnership between SAC-RT, City of Sacramento, City of West Sacramento, and to some degree, obviously, SACOG. So as part of the next steps to continue this project moving forward, we have been requested to change the project sponsorship from SACOG to SAC-RT. So today we are going to be asking that the Transportation Committee recommend that the Board of Directors delegate authority to the Executive Director to request the FTA change of project sponsorship. We do have a presentation today with Laura Ham from SAC-RT, and she's going to go over all the details of the history of the project as well as where we're at today and this specific request. So I'll turn it over to her.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Laura Ham. I'm the VP of Planning and Engineering for SAC-RT. Thank you for the opportunity to provide you with an update on the downtown Riverfront streetcar and West Sacramento light rail system connection. Work? Oh, there we go. So to briefly recap the background on the streetcar project, can everyone hear me okay? Am I on the mic okay?
Yes.
A little closer, maybe?
You're a little quiet, but we can hear you.
Okay. So to briefly recap background, is that better? Okay.
Yeah.
So we received approval from the FTA to enter into the Small Starts project development in 2014. We completed NEPA in 2016 on the original alignment, and we received a $50 million federal capital investment grant allocation in 2017, or federal fiscal year 17. We did not complete project development with the FTA at that time, but the project was placed out to bid in 2018, and bids came in January of 2019, significantly over the estimated budget. So at that point, the project was put on hold and reevaluated and ultimately downscoped. So what you'll see on the screen here is a project alignment that was developed in 2019 after those bids came in. The goal of that downscope was to preserve as much as possible of the funding awarded for the project, both the federal $50 million allocation and $30 million in TIRCP funds awarded to the project. We wanted to retain that state and federal funding if at all possible. And there were some things that had to be done in order to do that. We needed to keep the project the same mode, a streetcar, keep roughly the same alignment, although change of terminal points was acceptable, and move ahead with the same project team. So the alignment that was developed in 2019 was actually developed by a working group formed by the mayors of the two cities and Congresswoman Natsui. That alignment included track from Sutter Health Park, across the Tower Bridge, north on 3rd Street, and then entering Sacramento Valley Station. When we began progressing design for that alignment back in 2021, a few significant issues surfaced. The city of West Sacramento expressed concern to SAC-RT about the confinement of the streetcar alignment ending at Sac Valley Station, as they envisioned a system that could be a future extension of the existing light rail system. In addition, the design conflicted with future plans at Sac Valley Station Transit Plaza and the proposed rework of the I-5 on-ramp at I Street. So therefore, we went back to the drawing board with the two cities to look at further alternatives and also consulted with FTA on the project viability. So here's kind of where we are today. This map shows a currently proposed alternate alignment. The concept was adopted at a meeting convened by Congresswoman Matsui in March of this year and included representatives from the SAC-RT board, both cities, and SACOG, and it was later approved by the RT Board of Directors. As shown on the map, the new proposed alignment travels between Sutter Health Park in West Sacramento and the Sacramento Valley Station. It also uses Tower Bridge Gateway and Capitol Mall to cross the river at the Tower Bridge, but then we turn south down 3rd Street and travel up N Street to connect with the existing SAC-RT tracks at 7th and 8th, terminating at SVS, and then turning back on the same route. So you'll see on the map that the existing light rail track is in yellow and the proposed new streetcar route is in blue, with new track indicated in blue there on N Street and Capitol Mall. Project length is about 1.5 miles. The mode is still considered a streetcar, but it will use low-floor light rail vehicles. SAC-RT is in the process of procuring Siemens S700 vehicles right now for its light rail modernization project. It will use the same vehicle. The streetcar system will use the same vehicle, but in single-car consists rather than multiple-car train sets. So a few other notes on the revised alignment. It does provide connectivity to this entire SAC-RT network and regional services. It will not impact the City of Sacramento Rail Yard's Transit Plaza plan, as we're coming into the plaza from the other direction. It will provide better direct access from West Sacramento to state buildings in downtown Sacramento, the Crocker Art Museum, and the new Sacramento Commons development. Along with the original connectivity benefits in West Sacramento and Sacramento, we've got connectivity at Sutter Health Park, to the Bridge District, the River District, Old Sacramento, Sac Valley Station, and other downtown destinations such as the Golden One Center. I should mention that the location of the stop on N Street has not yet been determined. We'll further refine that stop location as we enter into design. So we've just got a pin on the map showing that there will be a stop on N Street in that segment of the line. It does provide for expansion of the light rail system or other connecting modes into West Sacramento and beyond. We also believe that this revised alignment will achieve higher ridership, giving greater benefit to greenhouse gas and vehicle miles traveled reduction than the 2019 alignment, which should help us preserve funding dedicated to the project and obtain a better project rating. Some things to keep in mind is that we do have that additional design, environmental, and utility relocation. We haven't evaluated the costs yet of the additional utility relocation that may be required on N Street. That'll take us about 18 months. However, we do think that the construction costs will be comparable or less than the originally proposed alignment. So here's a look at the schedule. As we've already started to complete design and environmental updates and all the other elements required for the SSGA application, the revised project is anticipated to enter construction in early 2027 with completion in 2029. We're working with FTA right now on next steps for our project update and completion of that Small Starts Grant application. We may make some adjustments to the schedule as far as entering into the SSGA, but this is kind of our best conservative estimate right now on schedule. So the project budget was derived from using the average cost per length of track from the 2019 streetcar bid. And then we escalated the cost to anticipated $2027 when we expect to go out to bid. The rescoped project estimate of $126 million includes all the costs, design, administration, and construction of the new alignment. The spent to date row there at 22.5 million includes all costs on the project to date, including the work that was completed for the 2014 alignment. The cost of the two vehicles at $11.5 million is for those two new Siemens S700 vehicles that I mentioned. We've got a mock-up of what those vehicles will look like on the screen there. That's not a real picture, but that's pretty close to what our new LRVs will look like. Our federal allocation may increase to up to 50% of the project costs. So that could be up to $80 million in federal funding allocated to the project. We have discussed that with FTA and we'll reassess that once we update our project rating. So, and I just want to mention again that there is a strong indication that we can preserve that $50 million allocated by FTA to the project, up to 50%. We hope to retain the majority of the $30 million in TIRCP funds allocated to the project as well, but we do need to do a project update for the state as well. So the SAC-RT board and the two cities have already approved the transition of project ownership to SAC-RT, previously owned by the Streetcar JPA, which both cities have taken action to disband, decommission, whatever the right term is, the JPA here at some point in the near future. They've also approved the award of design and environmental contracts to complete the additional project development required, and approved entering into a new reimbursement agreement with the city of West Sacramento. The city of Sacramento also took action recently, provided a resolution of support of the new N Street alignment. So yesterday, I can update you on what it says on this slide. The city of West Sacramento actually approved the reimbursement agreement. So we're pretty excited to move forward with that. That'll prepare us for a Small Starts Grant agreement. And they allocated the funding for the additional project development work that needs to be completed. So next steps, as owner and operator of the streetcar, SAC-RT will be responsible for construction, operation, and maintenance of the streetcar, as well as all federal grant requirements. If sponsorship is transitioned, SAC-RT will hold responsibility to complete all the required elements of for the SSGA, including project readiness, technical capacity, financial commitments, and all other requirements as the federal grantee and Small Starts Grant applicant. So that kind of concludes my presentation. There's a lot that has occurred with this project since 2014. I just kind of gave you the Reader's Digest version, but If you have any more specific questions on the background and the original alignment, we'd be happy to answer those as well.
Thank you very much. A very thorough report on the status, and we have before us a recommendation that we approve the delivery, or excuse me, that we approve the transfer of responsibility and the funding. So Jay, you have a question, Director Chenier?
I don't have a question, just a comment. In that this has been a long time coming. We spent a lot of time and worked well, I think, with the city of West Sac and the city of Sacramento, and I would like to move the action item
All
forward.
right, very good. Thank you. And we have a motion then, and Chris Ledesma, Director Ledesma, you have your hand up.
Yeah, and thanks to Director Chenier for the motion, and with a comment, I'll second. But thanks, first of all, Jay, thank you for your support over the years on this project as well, and to the greater SACOG board and staff. This has been a long time coming. This has been a circuitous journey we've had with the streetcar project, but we think it was a unanimous vote last night to keep the project moving forward, because as the SACOG board knows, this kind of transit matters. We have a lot of housing coming in on the Bridge District and in the Washington neighborhood, both of which were supported very, very well by SACOG boards in terms of the grants they provided for the transit-oriented development and housing we have going on there. So this is a big step, and I'm happy to second this and vote on this today, and hope that most of the SACOG board goes along with it.
Thanks. And we have, I understand Director Bradford Vice Chair Bradford has his hand up.
Thank you, Chair Saylor. So just a general question really related to streetcars, and maybe so I can have an understanding of the difference between light rail and streetcar. Is it number of cars? Is it length of system? Is it kind of squishy what the difference is?
It's a little bit squishy, but I would say the primary difference is that it typically runs as a single car train set versus multi-car train sets that you'll see in a light rail system. Light rail systems and streetcar systems typically are very similar as far as their construction. The stations may be somewhat different and may look more like a scaled up bus stop versus what you'll see at a light rail platform, where it can accommodate those multiple vehicle sets. We are constructing the system with the idea in mind that ultimately it could be transitioned to a light rail extension into West Sacramento and beyond.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, so we do have a motion and a second. Is there any other board comment before I'm going to ask for public comment on this item before we vote? I don't see any other board hands. Is there anybody in the public who'd like to address us on this topic?
Chair Saylor, there's no public comment.
Okay, so we have a motion from Director Chenier with a second from Director Ledesma. Please call the roll.
Thank you. Director Branscombe? Absent. Gog?
Yes.
Ledesma for Guerrero?
Aye.
Jennings?
Yes.
Andreotta for Joyner?
Yes.
Lozano?
Aye.
Thank you. Sander?
Aye.
Chenier?
Aye.
Spokley?
Yes.
Soon?
Aye.
Vice Chair Bradford?
Aye.
Vice Chair Desmond?
Aye.
And Chair Saylor?
Aye. Thank
Motion
you,
carries.
everybody. Let's move on to item 4, the 2023 project delivery process. Jose Luis Caceres. Are you with us?
Excuse me. Good morning, everyone. I'm Jose Luis Cáceres. We can take down the PowerPoint for right now. I'm not going to jump into it yet. I am the team leader for the project delivery and MTIP team. The action before the committee is whether to recommend to the board that it approve the 2023 delivery plan process. Can everyone hear me all right?
Yes.
Great. Okay. What I'd like to do is briefly just talk about what is it, the purpose of it, how it works, and why it works. Actually, the purpose first. So the purpose of our delivery plan process is to support project delivery. We want to describe which projects will come in first in a given year and which projects would have to wait for after them. In other words, what are our priorities for annual delivery? When we define this, then we create the space for the aggressive delivery we want to see in the region. Sorry, I'm looking outside and I'm seeing our window cleaners. So let me talk about what it is. It's how we're going to handle the delivery of congestion mitigation and air quality funds and regional surface transportation program funds. These are called CMAQ and RSTP dollars. These dollars are programmed by the board with actions from EDCTC and PCTPA. These are the projects that are going to help implement our long-range transportation plan. You would think that our delivery plan process would be obvious. A project program in the current year is what we should expect to deliver, but that's not actually been the experience. Let's go ahead and cue the PowerPoint. Our experience is that delivery plan failure is a natural part of the federal aid process. You can plan on projects delivering, but if they come in just a couple, 2 or 3 months late, then we have delivery failure. So lots of regions, including the state, run a reservation system. And the problem with this reservation system is they end up just getting very nervous at the end of the year when they're looking and they're not seeing their transportation projects come in. You see, the goal is to use up all of your transportation funds. Our funds have a shelf life, and if we don't use them, we risk losing them. Conversely, if we can use all of our funds, we can win and earn extra money. So I'm going to just go over a brief PowerPoint that describes this a little more visually. So let's back up. So we're talking about project delivery, which I think everyone likes talking about, and then delivery failure, which, you know, some people have told me to not even put that on the PowerPoint. We don't want to talk about failure, but I think it's part of it. It's part of the conversation. So if you're following along the PowerPoint, and for me, it's small, far away from me. There are projects, you can think of the Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program, the list of all our federally funded projects in our region, as projects that have, as a list that has projects in year 1, year 2, year 3, and year 4. And this year, year 1 is the federal fiscal year 2023. It just began this year in October, and it'll end at the end of September. It'll end at the end of September 2023. That's year 1. In an ideal year, all the projects in year 1, every one of those little orange boxes would come in and obligate. But that's not really what happens. What ends up happening is some fraction of those projects just aren't going to make it. Their environmental or right-of-way is going to take too long, staff turnover, dealing with all the different challenges of delivering a federal aid process. So what we do is we look at years 2, year 3, and year 4. There are projects out there that would love to come in earlier if we could create the space for that to happen. So what we do is we have a hybrid between a reservation-based system and a first-come, first-served system. The reservation system is like when you make a reservation for dinner, 7 p.m., you show up there at 7 p.m., you expect there's going to be a table waiting for you. We have that in our federal aid system, in our delivery plan process. From October up until February 1st, if you come in 2023 to obligate your CMAQ and RSTP funds that are in 2023, those funds are waiting there for you, but only for those 4 months. After that, you're not late. You're just not guaranteed that your money will be there, because starting February 1st, it's a free-for-all. Projects in year 2, year 3, and year 4, they can come in and obligate. And so by February, we might see a project that's out-programmed in 2025 delivering its CMAQ or RSTP project. This creates an incentive for early delivery, but it also means that there are consequences for the late delivery. We call that delivery failure. I'll get to that in a little bit. So tier 1 is what we call, in our process, tier 1 is what we call the period where projects in the current year, they have their reservation. Tier 2 is what all the other projects, they have their period, and that lasts from February 1st until May 1st. On May 1st, we start getting creative because we need all of our money out the door. So we will look to creative solutions for obligating our funds. Last year, actually, Chris Doherty was instrumental in a creative solution. We loaned $2 million of our congestion mitigation air quality funds to the city of Citrus Heights for their bike trails project. They could use it, and we had the money, so we loaned them those funds. In doing so, we took CMAQ that could have been obligated by year 1, year 2, or year 3, or year 4 projects, but they weren't coming in, and we were able to get that money out the door to a needy project. And the city of Citrus Heights will be paying us back with local dollars, interest-free over the years to come. So that's the last purple box there. Those are other projects. So let's look at the next screen. So this is generally what happens in a given year. Some amount of those projects in year 1, they don't make it, and we create space for these other projects to move forward. Projects from year 2, year 3, and maybe even in year 4, and maybe even other projects such as loans. Now let's talk about delivery failure. SACOG, we do not ask sponsors to come in before the board with their hat in their hands and explain why they failed to deliver in a certain year. We just treat this as a matter of this is the way federal funding works. You just sometimes don't meet your deadlines. Instead, we will reprogram them into later years. Now, you would think if you just missed delivering last year, you should be first in line this year. But if we did that, we would have to bump out year 2 projects who haven't done anything wrong. Instead, what we will do is we will take a failed project and try to move it to where we have space. Year 2, year 3, year 4, and then that last box represents paybacks of loans. So this does create a disincentive to coming in late. It doesn't mean you're first in line next year. It means you're going to go into whatever space we have for you. But that's okay, because a project that just failed last year is a tier 2 project this year. They will be able to obligate. They'll have to wait till February. A couple just notes. We can close that PowerPoint now. We have solutions. This process comes with its risks. What happens if my project comes in and there's no money there? We have lots of strategies, but my favorite strategy lately has been borrowing funds from other regions that aren't using their money. You see, our process, we're using all our money every year, but other regions with their processes, they aren't. And they're worried that their funds will expire. And they're happy to loan it to us for us to repay, not even just in 1 year, but sometimes 3 years out. And this allows us to advance current year and future year projects years faster than otherwise possible. And these loans are interest-free. Later at the next TC or the meeting after that, I will be presenting a report on last year's delivery, the loans that we took, and how those loans impacted our ability, how they hopefully helped us win and earn free money from FHWA. I think just one final note. This process isn't just a process on paper. I am meeting with the city and county of Sacramento every month, along with local assistants. The other cities in Sacramento, we meet with them bi-monthly. We meet with Placer bi-monthly, Yuba Sutter quarterly, El Dorado. I'm going up to El Dorado County today. We are communicating this plan often, and we're checking on project schedules often. Our goal, again, is to help our projects deliver so that we can implement the goals of our long-range plan. And with that, I'll take questions.
Thank you, Jose Luis. It's always a pleasure to hear your presentations. Colleagues, are there any questions regarding this topic? I'm not seeing any questions.
I do have one.
Thank you, David.
I apologize. I'm coming to you from Montana, so my connection is a little iffy here. Maybe I'll cut video to make it better. Okay. I sort of asked this question last year, and it might be slightly off topic for this delivery discussion, but bear with me for just a moment. We make funds available to projects, to a given agency like mine, Rancho Cordova. We'll get funds available, then we'll apply, and we'll use local dollars as a match, and those match dollars generally leverage us into a better position in terms of getting the grant. And I've always wondered if there isn't a smarter way to do that, if there isn't a better game theory approach to this. Because once those dollars have been committed to Rancho Cordova, we can use them for a match, but they're not available to anybody else in the region, even if we don't get the grants we're after, and we just have to wait and wait and wait and wait to actually get the funding for the project. It seems to me like if we had a core pool of funds that we could apply to say, Yolo County, you're going out, you're trying to get this grant, here's your match. If you get it, you keep it. If you don't get the grant, the dollars go back in the pool, we use them to try to match somewhere else. That strategy would allow us to leverage more outside dollars. But I don't know if it is legal or possible, or if it would help out this situation we're talking about with regard to cash flow and actually delivering projects in the end. But theoretically, that would yield much more in terms of match than our current system. So if there are any comments on that from staff, I'd appreciate hearing it.
I just want to say, these are the kinds of questions I live for. I love all sorts of ideas for creative delivery. What you bring up actually sounds and almost rhymes with something SACOG is already pursuing. And I want to bring up Chris Doherty to address your creative idea and also share what SACOG is doing about it. Chris.
Yes, good morning. Yeah, Director Sander, this is actually, we launched earlier this year this exact program called the Revolving Match Program that we have taken funds out of the regional funding round, about 25%, and developed a revolving about every 6-month match program where projects submit to us, and then we will then approve a certain amount of funding for the match for those projects moving forward. And they do not, those funds do not get programmed until they win their match award or their larger program award. So if they are not successful in that grant application, they go back into the pool for the next 6-month cycle of that. In July, we approved our first round of those projects, about $11.5 million worth of funding for 4 projects to move forward. And if those projects are successful, if all 4 of them are, we will have leveraged that $11.5 million into about $300 million approximately of project funding coming into the region.
That should alleviate sort of the pressure we have in project delivery as well.
It would, yes.
Because now you've got more resources sort of available when the project is ready, as opposed to still having to wait for something else to get funded.
Director Sander, can I just jump in for 1 sec, which is,
Sure.
So yeah, I also appreciate the question. Actually, that whole topic came up the last time in 2020. Many who were here remember all the discussions we had on our funding round. And this is one of the many things that kind of came to light, and an idea that we thought was really good. And as Chris already just told you all, we're implementing. One thing which gets to the item in a couple of agenda items from now on the funding round guidelines, the money that we put down, right, in this revolving match program means less money for some of the core programs. And in particular, per your action from and your feedback from a couple of committee cycles ago, we're gonna put less. We're gonna capping this transformative category of larger projects. We've got more money in the maintenance and modernization, and we've got a revolving match program. That makes all the sense in the world for both what you described, and if you think about now all the money available at the state and federal level, right? The way that we are going to leverage is by putting money down and trying to win those grants. But it will mean that there is going to be increasing pressure on the transformative program, and I'm hoping that Chris and or Christina can mention that in the next item, because this is all about priority setting and some trade-offs. So we think that's a really good trade-off to make, but it is going to make the transformative program even that much more competitive going into the next 6-month funding round cycle, if that makes sense.
Okay, thanks, James. Other questions from board members? Okay, we're ready for a motion, but before we do that, is there any public comment request?
There's no public comment.
All right, so we have a recommendation that we approve the delivery plan process for federal fiscal year 2023 as presented. Is there a motion to move forward and approve that? I see
Director
Vice
Bradford
Chair.
will move.
What's that?
Director Bradford will move.
Oh, thank you.
Seconds.
Wonderful. So we have a motion from Bradford and a second from Desmond. Please call the roll.
Thank you, Director Branscombe. Absent Gog,
Yes.
Ledesma for Guerrero,
Yes.
Jennings,
Yes.
Andreotta for Joyner,
Yes.
Lozano,
Aye.
Sander,
Aye.
Chenier,
Aye.
Spokely,
Yes.
Soon,
Aye.
Vice Chair Bradford,
Aye.
Vice Chair Desmond,
Aye.
and Chair Saylor.
Aye,
Motion carries.
thank you. And that brings us to item 5, the Trade Corridor Enhancement Program project nominations. And this is Christina again.
No, Chris is going to be doing the presentation
Oh,
for us today.
hello, Chris. If you're speaking, we can't hear you.
Thank you. Is it better now?
Much better.
Awesome. Thank you, Director Saylor, members of the committee. Chris Doherty with the transportation team. The action item in front of you today is a recommendation to nominate 5 projects to apply for funding for the Trade Corridor Enhancement Program, or the Tsep program. It's an SB1 funded competitive program run by the California Transportation Commission. The Tsep program is designed to fund projects that support freight and goods movement throughout the state. Per the program guidelines, the Tsep program requires the MPO to nominate regional projects to compete in the regional programs. This ensures that the projects are listed in the current MTPSCS for our MPO and are in alignment with the policies in the MTPSCS. 5 projects were submitted to SACOG for review. Besides MTPSCS concurrence, an additional requirement is that a project has to be on a designated critical urban freight corridor. SACOG is responsible for designating those critical urban freight miles for the region. We have roughly 18 to allot throughout our region. SACOG historically has been very thoughtful about which projects would best utilize those miles because some areas have significant truck traffic or will in the future, but are not currently designated. If a nominated project is not on the critical urban freight corridor, it will need to be designated by SACOG if that project is funded through the Tsep program. That only applies to one project on the current list of 5 that we're asking for nominations today, and that is the Southeast Connector D2A project. After review of all 5 projects submitted to SACOG for review, staff is recommending to nominate all 5 projects to be nominated. And those projects are the YOLO 80 Managed Lanes project, the Yolo County Road 32A Crossing Relocation and Grade Separation project, Sacramento County Watt EV Truck Charging Facility, the Capital Southeast Connector D2A project, and the I-5 Managed Lanes project. In addition to nomination, staff is also recommending identifying the YOLO 80 Managed Lanes project as a regional priority. This is due to it being a mega region project, it being a very large capital project requesting approximately $100 million from the Tsep program. Also it's on a critical freight corridor and supports the MTPSCS, and is also uniquely co-nominated by Caltrans headquarters as well, which really helps in its competitiveness. So with that, staff is recommending that the committee recommend to the board to nominate these 5 projects for nomination to apply to the Tsep program, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Chris. Colleagues, are there questions on this presentation?
Chair Saylor, Director Bradford.
Yes, thank you, Gary.
So, quick question about the Yolo County Road 32A crossing. I noticed the other projects listed indicated whether or not it was an existing corridor, and I didn't see anything there. Is that because it's really affiliated with the railroad track and so it doesn't need that designation, or?
It is on the corridor as it is adjacent to the freeway.
Okay.
It is a grade separated crossing on Road 32A parallels after the causeway into Davis, and so it's a grade separation project on that.
Great,
corridor.
thank you.
Yes.
Okay, good question. Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, I had sort of a strategy question.
Thank you, David. Go ahead.
This pool of funds comes from a larger pool that is automatically divided between Caltrans and local governments. And in this case, we're sort of prioritizing a Caltrans project with the local government part of it, after Caltrans has already taken a cut. So if you look at it just from that perspective, regardless of how anything ranks, are we at risk of losing Caltrans support for other projects in our region, given that we're partnering on this one, like giving up the local government share on this one to a Caltrans project?
I don't believe so. Because of the size of this project, the project team has strategized going after, so the Tsep funding, let me back up for a second, is divided into two general pots of money. 40% of it goes to statewide projects that are nominated by Caltrans. And then the remaining 60% is divided into regional pots of money. Our region, and I don't have the numbers directly in front of me about what the amounts are, our region also includes the Bay Area in that. But to unlock the regional pot of money also, it needs a regional nomination from the MPO. So their goal is to split that, the fund request over both the state and the regional pot of money.
Okay, that is very helpful. I would just hate to see, and we've seen in other areas where, local government sets up partners with the state, and the state then, in response to that, diverts resources elsewhere because they're now getting a revenue stream from a local share. So this does not appear to be that situation, though, as you just described it.
No, we actually used this successful strategy in the last Tsep round as well for an I-5 and Placer Sacramento Gateway project that was successful with that co-nominating process.
All right, thank you.
Sue Tacker, did you have a comment on that question? Looks like you're.
I think that Chris did a great job. I wanted to mention that the success that we had in the last round on the 80 project, but also on the I-5 project, using the regional and the state shares. So that works really well, but I appreciate the support.
Okay. Any other questions? I've got one. There was these 4 projects. Other than the regional priority, the others are indicated as not ranked for priority. How do you think that will play in the consideration of the projects? If there are should we be ranking them, and what was the decision process to determine that we wouldn't?
So per the guidelines that the CTC pushed out, we are not required to prioritize or rank in any way, just nominate in a gatekeeping kind of role as an agency. We just felt, because of the significance of that Yolo 80 project, to identify it as a big regional priority was beneficial to the project. Okay.
And then among the other 4, there was no reason to, was there any consideration of prioritization, or you just determined that that was not helpful for anybody?
We just didn't feel it was needed to move the projects forward.
Okay, very good. Any other questions from the board, from the committee? I don't see any. Is there any public comment on this?
There's no public comment.
Okay. Is
the item?
I think that's Director Soon made a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Lozano.
Director Lozano seconded. All right, let's call roll.
Director Branscombe, absent. Gog,
Yes.
Ledesma for Guerrero,
Yes.
Jennings,
Yes.
Andriotta for Joyner,
Yes.
Lozano,
Aye.
Sander,
Aye.
Chenier,
Aye.
Spokely,
Yes.
Soon,
Aye.
Vice Chair Bradford,
Aye.
Vice Chair Desmond,
Aye.
and Chair Saylor.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thanks.
Chair
And that,
Saylor, do you mind if I just make one quick comment about the action you just took in the item? Because your question was an interesting one in terms of the ranking of all those projects, and it really gets to the heart, I think, of what is really important but very difficult to do, which is to set priorities, especially on transportation, especially when many of you come to SACOG, right, in this committee, with obviously a very keen interest in transportation. But that said, I would say that that's one of the most important things that we should be doing as a regional agency, is to set priorities and to sort of say, in this case, that YOLO 80, the YOLO Causeway, where we've won the infra grant, and it's hopefully going to be one of our early demonstrations of priced and managed lanes that's truly multimodal. That is a regional priority. And then the question is, well, where are the other projects fall in that ranking? We're going to be increasingly asked to prioritize, and it was going to be increasingly challenging to do that, right? Because some of you in your jurisdictions are going to be naturally at the bottom of the list, of any priority list, right? And so you will ask the very good questions of why. I think the second thing I just want to point out, which again is a very fair question about why not ranking among these five. Honestly, I think in goods movement and trade corridor, we don't have necessarily, I think, all the data and the criteria that we would like to have to be able to bring to bear on this exercise. And that, when you said, was there discussion, there was discussion. And I think we've got to attend to that. Like, I actually think we need to be, on general transportation projects, I think we're much better because of our funding round and a lot of our tools and our data. But I do hope that in the board presentation, as this moves forward, as you just gave that approval to move it onto the board, we can maybe bring some really interesting data on goods movement, and truck movement, and corridors, and priorities, because I think we need to I think flex this muscle and build the muscle a little bit more in goods movement, because we're going to be asked increasingly to I think to set some regional, and even in this case mega regional priorities around goods movement.
I think it's an interesting topic. Thank you, James, for that. If we have this 18-mile additional freight corridor, trade corridor that we can work with, I think we only dealt with 2.6 miles in these four proposals as added trade corridor lane miles. Do we get another allocation? So we're responding to project applications, first of all. So there are probably other additional areas around the region that could be eligible for this consideration. And so that's one question. Are we looking at those other areas? And then a second one for us into the future. Is this a revolving 18 miles, or do we now have 15.4 miles left to deal with?
That's a great question, Director Saylor. And I believe, as I understand it, that those do revolve once the project is complete and open to traffic.
When it's complete.
Them back. But we are about to kick off through funding through Caltrans Sustainable Transportation Planning Grant, a zero-emission vehicle freight study for the region that will really help us over the next 12 to 18 months, really identify to a much finer detail and of what those needs for freight are around our region. It'll probably be the jumping off point to probably maybe a larger freight strategy, but we're definitely going to be taking a look at that in the near term.
Okay, well, that's very, very good project, very good topic. And Sue, you have your hand up.
I wanted to add to what Chris stated, that we are also looking as a state to do a couple of freight studies that may be able to provide information to our application process going forward about the same time frame as the zero emission study that Chris mentioned. So between 12 and 18 months, but I'm asking for data as we get it so we can apply it to the applications for free.
Okay, thank you. We took the action and we're moving forward, and there's some robust conversation and work to happen on this topic in the time to come. So thank you all. Brings us to item 6, the regional funding round program guideline adoption. And this is Chris again.
It is. Thank you, Director Saylor. Good morning again. This item is in front of you is an action item to recommend to the board to approve the program guidelines for the Maintenance and Modernization Program, the Transformative Program, and the Community Design Program, and to adopt the final regional funding round budget. In fall of 2020, the board adopted a policy framework for the 2020 regional funding program, and that framework included, it was the product of about 6 months of extensive stakeholder outreach to our 4 county partners. That new framework created 2 new programs that are under the regional program headline, that is the Maintenance and Modernization Program and the Transformative Program. They were really designed to kind of better meet the needs of our partner jurisdictions. The Maintenance and Modernization Program was really designed to fund those fix-it-first projects, or those small, innovative, non-capacity increasing projects that were under $5 million. It's included a much more streamlined application than had previously been used for our funding round. The Transformative Program was intended for all capacity increasing projects and any project over $5 million. This also, we included along with this, not under the regional program, but we ran at the same time the Community Design Program, which has been a long-running program that funds transportation projects that support blueprint-oriented land use changes. Earlier this year, the board approved to carry that policy framework forward into the from the 2020 funding round into the 2022-23 funding round. That policy framework has been updated and was brought to this committee last month, but is also included in this packet as both attachment 2, but also with the red line version available for your review under attachment 3. In April of this year, the board also approved a draft funding budget for the regional funding round and the guidelines for the revolving match program. The draft budget was approximately $130 million for this round and was based on 2 years of SACOG apportionment. This morning, we are bringing an updated funding budget to the committee. There's really only one minor change. Staff had worked with the staff from the Sacramento Transportation Authority to apply an additional $1.7 million from the Smart Growth Implementation Program. And that will apply to all to Sac County projects that are submitted under the Community Design Program because it meets the requirements of that program. So the new budget is now approximately $131.7 million, and that is available in the first attachment table for your review. Because of the smaller funding round this round, we've had this discussion before where we brought this to the committee last time where we had proposed, sought your feedback on a 25% cap on the Transformative program. We got that feedback from you, appreciate that, and we've included that into the program guidelines, excuse me. This will limit the Transformative program to just under $29 million. And with larger projects allowed in that program, we'll make that pot more competitive. But as James talked about earlier, this has freed us up to do more creative leveraging of our dollars with the revolving match program to go after some of these additional state and federal dollars that now exist. Over the past few months, staff has been conducting stakeholder outreach for the funding round to all of the 19 jurisdictions in the 4-county region. That has consisted of one-on-one meetings with staff, and we've overwhelmingly heard that the primary needs of our local partners are around Fix It First and those maintenance and modernization programs. We've sought their feedback on a more maintenance and modernization focused round and gotten nothing but positive feedback on that approach. So the program guidelines for the Maintenance and Modernization Program, Transformative, and Community Design programs are included in your attachments 4 through 6. There have been some minor changes included in the program guidelines from the previous rounds. Those guidelines include the updated language from the policy framework has been carried forward into them, updated funding information, updated calendars, and project submission information that changes from round to round. With the adoption of these guidelines, staff is anticipating to release a call for projects for all 3 rounds the week of October 24th. With applications due on the following dates, we're going to stagger them every 2 weeks to help the pressure on some of our grant writers around the region. January 11th, for, the due date for the Community Design Program. January 25th for the Maintenance and Modernization Program, and February 8th for the Transformative Program. And I did want to end on one last note. This is the 10th cycle of the Community Design Program that has been run since its creation from our staff, Greg Chu. I just wanted to acknowledge that for almost 20 years, Greg has been providing an amazing program and staffing a really impactful program for the last 10 cycles. And we're happy to carry this forward this year. Just want to thank Greg for that. But this concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Chris. Are there any questions on this process? Director Bradford, I can't see you. If you just speak up if you have a question or comment.
I don't have any at this time.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Anybody? I don't see any other hands raised. Is there any public comment on this item?
There's no public comment.
Okay. All right. Is there a motion to approve the recommendation to the board on the program guidelines and basically adopt and move forward? Is there a motion?
Make a motion.
Okay. Director
Ledesma
Andreatta.
will second.
And Director Andreatta moves and Director Ledesma seconds. Please call the roll.
Director Branscombe, absent. Gog,
Yes.
Ledesma for Guerrero,
Yes.
Jennings,
Yes.
Andreatta for Joyner,
Yes.
Lozano,
Aye.
Sander,
Aye.
Chenier,
Aye.
Spokley,
Yes.
Sue,
Aye.
Vice Chair Bradford,
Aye.
Vice Chair Desmond,
Aye.
and Chair Saylor.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
We're getting a bit of an echo that's happening in the sound for some reason at this point. We're moving to item 7, the blueprint schedule extension recommendation. And I think, Mr. Corliss, I think you have some opening comments.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Saylor. I'm glad that we're not squeezed on this item. We have a little bit of time to discuss it because even if it's at the end of the agenda, it's still pretty important. I know I don't have to necessarily remind you all of the latest long-range plan that we've embarked upon. We're actually coming out and doing the thing you asked us to do, which is the tour of all the city councils and board of supervisors. I was just in the city of West Sacramento last night, and those are going very well to set up, as you know, what we've kind of called now and branded the blueprint. But the blueprint, to harken back somewhat to the 2004 blueprint, but to really look ahead and in this plan allow ourselves as a region the time and the capacity to think about where we're heading and what our region will look like and be like in the year 2050, which is our horizon year. So we're setting all that up. It's really good to get out again to all of your councils and boards. But a few things have happened and we're working very hard on this and working with your staff and getting ready for these, what we're calling these 3 pathways. A few things have happened that I just want to, Clint's going to go into detail on these. One of which is we run this federal RAISE grant, which really is incredibly exciting, and it will allow us to do a ton of community engagement with a real focus on equity and disadvantaged communities around innovative forms of mobility and car share and clean zero emission vehicles and micromobility and microtransit. We want that to be able to show up in the next plan. This board has taken some really bold steps on racial equity and community engagement writ large, which we want to show up in this next plan. We're going to have a very hard time, challenging time, honestly, meeting our next greenhouse gas target. This will not be a flick the switch. This will be a lot of work and effort to abide by both state and federal requirements. And we want to do our due diligence, as I know you all want and you've requested, to both engage all of you and your constituents and the residents of the region in a conversation next year about our future, but also in terms of what it means to implement this plan, commitments that we need to make as a region collectively across all public agencies. And that all leads us to believe we're really crunched on our schedule. We are not going to do, I think, the job that we want to be able to do if we are trying to adopt this on our original schedule of spring of 2024. And so per your memo, and we're going to get into the discussion this morning, we're looking at an extension of that schedule for a variety of those reasons, as much as 15 to 18 months into the fall of 2025. So that's a big extension. We understand it's a big change, and there are risks inherent in that change. It's not just a no-brainer. There are some risks. So again, I'm hoping I've set that up, and Clint, I've set that up to have you kind of dive into a little bit of the details about benefits, risks, so that we get some good feedback this morning from the committee. Obviously not an action item today, but the timing, I just want to end on the timing. As you see in the memo, we would likely have to get state legislation to give us an extension of our sustainable community strategy. So if we're going to run a state bill, we need to be all in soon. Because that obviously that cycle of state legislation is going to start pretty soon. So we need to be in front of that. So anyway, without further ado, take it away, Clint.
Thanks. So James talked a little bit about the benefits, and I'll highlight a couple more, give a little more detail on them. But we've heard both, in the committee discussions, at the board discussion, as well as conversations with your local staff that and we fully recognize this because we feel it, is the technical work on this document is a huge load. And oftentimes we're bringing you information and then asking you to make decisions in very, very short order. With this extension, it gives us a little bit more time to come to you and we can digest some of the lessons we're learning through the pathways discussions that we're talking about. We're trying to bring you those in the spring. Under the current schedule, you'd be seeing those in the spring. We'd be asking you to take actions as early as summer on those, on deciding what is the land use pattern, what is the transportation investment package that we're carrying forward in this plan. That's just a very short amount of time for you to really to think and digest all of that, for us to come and really give time that is needed to talk about really important things like pricing, like our land use pattern, like the strategies that go along with that. It also just is a short amount of time to engage with your local staff. So the extension allows that technical work to happen, but also allows for that additional engagement with you, with stakeholders, and with your staff. That's a hugely important benefit we could get out of this. It also allows, as James mentioned, with the RAISE application, also with our upcoming Engage, Empower, and Implement program, it would allow us to build a lot more time into the public and stakeholder outreach for this plan. Right now, the required outreach, we try to do a really good job of it, but it comes early in the planning process. It comes as we're kind of creating the vision for the future. What we don't always do a good job of is once we've created that vision, going back out and say, okay, here's the vision. What are the strategies we need to implement that vision and what trade-offs come along with those? An extended timeline allows us to kind of have now 2 cycles. What is the vision and how are we going to get there? And we can do that both with you, your staff, but also very importantly from the Racial Equity Action Plan perspective, from EEI and with RAISE. Those are all opportunities for us to better engage the public in this process as well. And then the last thing I wanted to mention as far as benefits go, and then I want to talk about some of the risks and how we plan to mitigate those, is this was also a priority of the Mega Region Working Group. We are required to have consistency with our neighbors, the Bay Area and with San Joaquin, when we're talking about the travel back and forth between our regions. But we're currently 3 years out of sync with the San Joaquin, 2 years out of sync with MTC. Bringing us closer, if we were to go to fall of 2025, that puts us in line with the Bay Area, and much closer to San Joaquin as well. From the technical side, that will help us align our assumptions on interregional travel, on housing needs, but even more important than that, it would allow the policy discussions that you are having and that the Bay Area is having and San Joaquin are having to happen at the same time. So we can really start tackling some of those interregional dependencies, those economic dependencies that we know we have. And we've got a really great, the Mega Region Working Group now, we've got a really great platform to have some of those discussions. On the potential risks and how we would intend to mitigate them, the plan is really, there's 2 major components of the plan. There's the MTP, that's really a federal document. The state absolutely uses that as well. And then there's the SCS. And out of the SB 375 and our greenhouse gas target, that SCS is an additional component. The MTP side, we need that to be eligible, not just to receive to receive any federal grants and a lot of state grants, but any projects that you're carrying through that just need federal action. If you need NEPA certification or anything like that, we need to have that MTP in place. On the state side, for competing for SB1, we've talked about this quite a bit in the last several months. We need that SCS to be competitive for and eligible for certain state SB1 funding programs. So for the federal side, what we would be looking to do to mitigate that risk is an interim RTP or MTP. Basically taking our existing plan, let's update it with some of the newest assumptions. Let's not do a wholesale rethink of the land use pattern or a wholesale rethink of the transportation network, but let's carry that plan forward for an additional 2 years. We can certainly make adjustments to it to reflect new realities, new priorities in the near term. Similar to how we make amendments on the transportation improvement program from time to time, we would do a much more scaled effort. Then on the state side is where James was mentioning we would go and seek a legislative extension of both the sustainable community strategy and the accompanying EIR that allows for certain tiering and things like that off of our regional plan. That is where we would go and ask the state for a 2-year extension that would allow us into the fall of 2025. We would be going this route not without precedent. This is a very similar route to what Sandag just did on their last plan for some similar reasons. They wanted a bigger more time and a bigger opportunity to rethink their plan and their priorities. They were able to run that legislation, and they did adopt an interim RTP. Before we go out and really start nailing down the details of what exactly this would take, we wanted to make sure we came to you all first to get your thoughts, concerns, ideas around this, and then we will, depending on your reactions today and the board, we'll go out in earnest and begin talking with our state and federal partners, our local agencies. The RTPA partners we have talked with about this. On the El Dorado side, we believe they're on a different schedule from us. They're on a 5-year schedule. We're on a 4-year schedule. So in El Dorado, I believe they do have the time for us to extend our plan, and they can still adopt on their schedule. In Placer County, this would be a little bit of a delay to their schedule. The staff there are open to that, but we do want to make sure we're doing our due diligence to make sure any interim update we do covers Placer and El Dorado, because we do not want to leave them hanging as we are extending. So we believe we do have a path for that. And after today's conversation, we'll certainly go out and make sure and validate all of this and talk with Caltrans, with the Resources Board, with FHWA, our federal partners. We will begin that conversation in more earnest, depending on your input and direction today. So with that, I'll stop talking and leave it open for discussion.
Thank you to both James and Clint. I think you did a nice job of laying out the issue. Are there any questions from the board, from the committee? Darren, I see you're leaning forward.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, just a quick question. You mentioned something, Clinton, about projects not having NEPA clearance and needing that in the document. And so I was just curious, in the situation where a project that had been in the MPP earlier, then do they still retain that? I'm just thinking in terms of, how it would work if somebody's in process.
Yes, yeah. So if you're in the current plan, you're consistent with the RTP. There is there's a grace period. There's a 12-month grace period where your existing RTP can continue to function. You would be limited on the amendments that you could do to that document, but we don't want to depend on just that grace period, because we want to be able to, adapt as things change. That's where we would really make sure we would be doing that interim RTP. We would be doing that in time to meet the end of 2023 is when our current plan expires. We would want to get that interim RTP done by then. That way we don't have any kind of interruption in federal ability to approve projects or our air quality conformity that goes along with any kind of MTIP amendments, things like that, so that there's no risk, so that we can mitigate the risk to any local projects or regional projects that are in the current plan. We want to make sure we keep that MTP, that federal document, up to date. So that is not one that we'd be looking to extend. We'd be looking to do a very minor update that continues those projects forward. And then we would, again, when we adopt the SCS, if we were able to get the 2-year extension, then we would adopt the whole package, a new MTP with that accompanying SCS.
Got it.
Thank you, Darren. Are there other and this can be comments or questions, because the request here is for input and any direction that we might have to share with the team at this point. Any comments or questions from any of you? I can't see any hands. So I guess from my perspective, I think it makes a lot of sense. I think there's a lot of advantage to what's being proposed. I've had the pleasure of working with the mega region work group for the past several years, and this is consistent with the efforts that we've been advancing there. I think it'd be really exciting to have colleagues from the Bay Area and San Joaquin and our region together, asking our legislative delegations to support this opportunity for greater integration of our planning efforts across the mega region. I think it would be good for that legislative delegation to have a hand in advancing this purpose, but I think it would have a benefit for future issues that we might ask them to advance for us. So I think there's a lot of good reason for it. The question, James, I have for you is for some reason we are unsuccessful in pursuing legislation to this purpose. do we have a plan B on how we mitigate the risks that you've identified?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question, Director Saylor, because again, I want to make sure we're doing our job this morning to lay out benefits and risks, right? Because I was saying this isn't just sort of a slam dunk, and we say, sure, another 18 months would be really helpful. To answer your question, I just want to state just for everybody, the way in which we're going to get the true benefits from extending the schedule on the long-range plan is to decide soon we're going to extend the schedule on the long-range plan.
Right.
We don't want to hedge our bets. In other words, we don't want to hurry up, try to get a bill, and then if we get a bill, then spend another 2 years after that, because we'll lose a lot of the benefit that we're talking about. We get some of the benefits, but we don't get them all. This makes sense. So in other words, you all and we all have to make a decision soon, not knowing whether we can actually get this legislation passed next year. Now, if passed as prologue, San Diego did this, our sister agency, Sandag, as Clint mentioned. So it has been done before. As you mentioned, Chair Saylor, we think it's actually an exciting opportunity to think about getting the Bay Area delegation to work with ours and the San Joaquin delegation, the legislature. That's a great opportunity for cohesion, but it's not 100%. Chair Jennings asked me what was my, what would I, what's the over under on this, right? And it's very hard to say. We have a good shot, but we're not going to sit here this morning and say, no worries, this will be easy. This will take a lot of your time next year and our time to make sure we get it done. If we don't get a bill next year, and I want to think with a little bit of our legislative external affairs team and Christina Lockie and others, but if we don't get a bill next year, right, my initial thoughts are, think a little bit about, can we run it in time in 2024? Could we try again in 24 if it becomes a 2-year bill? Is there anything administratively that we might be able to do? Because what we're trying to figure out is, and this came up, by the way, in our analysis in the Citizens Initiative and the whole debate and discussion we've had around the citizens. If we fall out of compliance with an SES, we don't have an SES, right? What's the downfall there? And that's a real risk. We don't want to be in that position to be less competitive for state funding. So maybe there are things that we can do. Some of the programs it's an administrative decision in terms of our ability to compete. Others are in statute, right? So that's much harder. So I guess what I'm saying is, it's a great question. I can begin to give you the sausage making, my thought process in real time right now. We could certainly come back. I would imagine you'd want to take this up again in November.
Right.
Because as I said, we kind of need to make a decision soon.
Right.
In the next few months, so that we're off and running. And I'm sure all of you know, you don't run a bill deciding in January. You run a bill deciding now, right? So we need to lay the groundwork.
Well, I think, thank you for that. I think those are very apt comments, and I certainly support us making a decision on this as early as possible, so that we avoid confusion of work priorities for everybody, and that we can then all march together to make the changes in the legislature and elsewhere that we need to. Any other comments from any of the committee members?
Chair Saylor, this is Director Bradford. I do have a question about the legislation. It seems like there's kind of two challenges there, right? One is getting someone in the legislature to carry the legislation. And then the second one is, if that occurs, getting it through the legislative process and getting, through committee and the legislators to pass it and all of that. With respect to the Sandag legislation, was it passed unanimously or near unanimously, or do we not know?
Go back and look at that. We can certainly find that out pretty easily. And the other challenge, I'm not trying to pile on to the challenges, but I want to, right? We're trying to give you truth in advertising. As you know, we have a lot of new members next year in our delegation, right? We are going to likely have some new members, and that's a good thing. But also, I think it's going to require just that much more groundwork. I mean, believe me, we're going to start very soon to begin to put feelers out and have conversations, just in case, right? But then we have some thoughts about who might be good authors on this. But it does complicate it that we've got an election coming up and that we've got many new members coming in. Not that those new members wouldn't be great to carry something, but again, as I'm sure you all appreciate, seniority matters, positions on committees matter, right? And as Chair Saylor said, perhaps one thing that's kind of exciting here is if maybe we could get some of our Bay Area delegation to support this along with our delegation in Northern San Joaquin Valley.
Yeah. And there are members who have, whose districts encompass portions of our region and the Bay Area region as well. So there's some pretty good targets, I think, for this. Any other comments from the committee? And then we'll see if there are any public comment requests. I don't see any committee members. Is there any request for public comment on this topic?
There's no public comment.
All right, very good. James, do you have what you need?
Yeah, I want to make sure that people have the, if you have a question, even if it's forming in your head, you can ask now. You can certainly follow up with us. Again, I'm thinking in terms of a next step. I'm looking for all of you bringing it back to the Transportation Committee in November. We need to also understand if you all actually need to take a formal action on this. I'm not, so that's part of what we'll work on. Do you need to adopt a resolution? Would that help? Would that even be helpful in terms of the legislation? Remember, your November committees are your last committees, given our updated board calendar for the rest of the year. So November will be your last committee. We will have a special board meeting December 1st, and that will be it. So November is your last committee cycle.
So I can see an advantage in a resolution to have our board provide clear direction. I think would there also be an amendment to the overall work program for the work plan?
Yes, that for sure, because we're again, I think in a positive way, we're trying to give ourselves some more time and schedule out a lot of the work that goes into the MTP SES blueprint. But yes, that would I'm sure be required, as we'll have to rethink not just this current fiscal year, but the following fiscal year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Director Bradford, we for the Sandag vote, there was 64 yeses and 13 noes, so pretty tipped.
And in the assembly, that was what the vote was, and then probably similar proportions in the Senate. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. I think we're there. And if any of you have any comments or questions, James has invited you to share with him, and we appreciate the thoughtfulness that's going into this. I think that brings us to the end of our scheduled items, but we do have other matters on our agenda. James, I think you have a topic on other matters, or Christina.
Yeah, we wanted to follow up at the last Transportation Committee meeting. There was a discussion about putting together a working group to talk about the next funding round. And, we've been giving this a lot of thought since that last meeting. And we really, we have a few different ideas on it, but we really want to make sure that we're making not just best use of people's times, but we're really addressing the issues that we need to address as we go into starting to think already about the next funding round. As well as finishing out this current funding round. We have internally deliberated two paths that we could take for this working group. One would be a longer process that pulls the working group and effectively the Transportation Committee or board through the full development of the next funding round, in addition to kind of finishing out this existing funding round. The other option would be a shorter process, maybe 6 to 9 months, that's focused more on laying the groundwork, I would say, for the next funding round, and kind of understanding the background and how we do things given the rest of the funding round that we have to work through currently. Our plan is internally as staff to develop this more, but we do want to bring this back in November, to both the Transportation Committee and the board. But we wanted to bring this up here today to just kind of have a quick little discussion, if we could, about any preferences towards the longer versus the shorter process. So we have an understanding at our level as we move forward and try to put together a plan that we can start to embark on sooner than later, what the general preference might be as we kind of think this through a little bit more. So just kind of want to open it up for some discussion if there is any. We have a list of folks that have identified interest in participating, which is great. So would like to make sure that we confirm that as well. But want to hear from you, Director Saylor, as well as the other Transportation Committee members, if there's a preference for a longer versus shorter time frame, and how we can make this the most meaningful process that we can.
Okay. Jay, Director Chenier, you raised some insight. You had some insightful comments last time. Do you have any comments today?
I think I ran out of all my insightful comments. Yeah. I have a couple other comments I can certainly.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, I just want to make sure, and I have no doubt that you guys are thinking this way, that the process is inclusive as we go, because we don't want you guys to put in a lot of work and get down the road and then my city or others say, well, wait a minute, nobody ever talked to us about that. And I know this is on the heels of discussions you're having now or have had with them about priorities and all of that. But really the context here is making the process, maybe, I don't know that it's streamlining the process, but making it more worthwhile for them and things that they could use out of it. I know for the city, having to do the priorities has, I think, been good for us as an exercise in budgeting as well. So I don't know if I don't remember if we talked about who would be on the working group. I certainly think some SACOG members, but would think it important for some of the jurisdictions also to be sitting on it from the get-go. Good
comments. I think you see some head nods and thumbs up from the folks on those comments. I would be interested in having the experience, the full experience of 2 funding rounds, to take lessons learned and see how we can improve, how the SACOG board and team can improve this after we've had that full experience. So I guess I'm inclined toward maybe starting the conversation, but not finishing it until we're done with this funding round that we're about to implement.
I think that makes sense, Don, and also because you are going to have so many new members,
right?
That makes total sense. The only other thing I would add to that is being very, very clear on the charge that this working group will have. So again, we stay on track, whatever that track is, but that the board has agreed to a charge on this before we start moving down the road here. And so I would ask the staff to really work on that piece first with clarity. And maybe it's a policy committee or however you want to do it, but do that first, make sure we're all in the same place, and then involve the right people, I guess would be my whatever insight I have left here.
Excellent comments. Any other comments from anyone? I think that's, to me, that indicates a assent to the comments that have been made so far. And so I think that I hope that gives you some framework for your continued work and bringing back to us in the agendized item in November. If that's we good with that, folks?
Yep, that's great. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. That brings us, and I don't know if anybody has any public comment on that point on this conversation. I doubt it, but I'll make sure we give them that chance.
I see no public comment.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you all. Anything further, James? I think we're ready to adjourn.
Nothing further from me.
Very good. Thank you all. Have a great, productive day and make a difference. Bye-bye.
Thank you.